Welcome to Money Chat Today with your hosts Larry Steinhouse and Rick Lee. From the School of Hard Knocks, they present with years of knowledge on how to help you make more money and how to keep it.
Hi, I'm Larry Steinhouse.
And I'm Rick Lee.
Welcome to Money Chat Today. This is a show where we help people make more money and help them keep it. And today we have a great show. We actually have a special guest, Peter Gilbert. And Peter Gilbert is a estate planning and elder law attorney. And what we found, and actually, interestingly enough, a lot of people are bringing up the issue of what to do with an elderly person who has some money, may need to go into a nursing home care, and doesn't know how to handle that situation. And just tell you a little bit about Peter. Peter has been a practicing attorney for the last 20 years, and interestingly enough, he fell into estate planning by accident. And basically, estate planning, I tell you, estate planning is a very important thing for anyone who has money, anyone who's growing old. You know, you talk about, and Peter will tell you more, but you talk about the ongoing problem. I mean, people have $1 million, $2 million, not all of our viewers, but then all of a sudden they want to leave that money to their children or to their spouse, and what happens? The nursing home care ends up getting it all.
Yeah, and that's the problem. As I was looking at today's world, people used to be worried a lot about federal estate taxes. Well, that's no longer really a problem for most people. Now, if you're under $5 million of net worth, that's almost everybody. That's no longer a problem, and I think that's great. However, there is this other issue. It's kind of a good news, bad news situation. Mm-hmm. We all know that people are living longer, which is, right. I like that. We all like that.
Sure.
When I was growing up, there were very few, we called them old folks' homes. There were very few of them, and it was rare. People would work their career, get their pension, retire, and then die. That wasn't a great thing. People are living longer, and that's good. However, there's a risk, and that we all know this intuitively. There is a risk that we might become disabled, either temporarily or permanently. And the problem is the cost of our care, whether the medical part or just being cared for, has just skyrocketed. Typically in this area we're filming today, it's about $8,000 a month.
Wow,
that's just about $100,000 a year for a nursing home.
Wow.
It's a lot of money, and most people, the average people with some savings, Social Security, and a house, that will devastate them. And so that's one side of the problem, and people know that, and that's why we're there to help. The other part is a lot of people don't know they can be helped. Or they think they're beyond that help, or they have misconceptions about what can be done. So a lot of it is just educating people about what they can do to legally, without hiding or being cute with the government, but playing by the rules, things that people can do to protect a great deal of the assets they've worked so hard to accumulate.
You said government. We have a person who has assets. We have a nursing home, a nursing care. What does the government have to do with all this? Because
at some point, if we are, let's make it simple. Let's say a person's the sole surviving spouse, a single person. They become ill. Eventually, they get to a point where they need nursing home care.
Right.
It could be for a couple of years. It could be for longer. I know people have been in nursing homes for 10 years. Because often people have a mental disability, but physically they're not bad. They're pretty healthy. And that's actually, it's good they're healthy, but that also means that their period of care in the nursing home may be for some time at $8,000 a month. So a person may go into nursing home care, they will spend their money on that care eventually, and then they will receive a subsidy from the government. It's a federal program run through the states called Medicaid, not Medicare, but Medicaid. Medicaid is assistance for people who need that kind of care, whether at home or in a nursing home, and it subsidizes beyond what they can afford, subsidizes them getting that care. Now, that will happen. That person, my hypothetical person who goes to a nursing home, will be subsidized eventually once their CDs and their savings is exhausted. But I'm assuming this is a normal person who has a home that now is sitting vacant perhaps. When that person dies, having received that subsidy from the government has what's called a lien on that house to be repaid for whatever they subsidized, and over 2 or 3 years it might be easily in the 6 figures. So the government's there first in line to say, hey, before your children get a dime of that house or can take that house, we have to be repaid. And there's really no way around that.
Ouch.
So if to the family, it's a loss. But there's more to it than that. When that person, let's stay with that hypothetical single person in the nursing home receiving medical assistance, there's also, I'm assuming they would have children who care for their dad and want his quality of life, even though he's getting care, his quality of life to be as good and rich and fulfilling as it can be in that situation.
Sure.
Whether it's clothing or taking a trip or buying things, or it might be DVDs or music, whatever would make that life more enriched and just the quality of life better. Well, when you're on Medicaid, and I'm not saying this is wrong, but this is how the government works, you're allowed what's called a personal needs allowance. That is for your personal, getting your hair cut.
Okay.
Anything special that Medicaid, the insurance program doesn't pay for, or anything else, buying clothes, going on a trip, buying things. That personal needs allowance is $45 a month. Now, that's not a lot
Oh, no,
to
that's
cover
sure
all
is.
those things for quality of life. I'm not saying the government should spend more.
Right,
don't
I
get me wrong.
understand. Right.
What I am saying is that's not much.
Sure.
And in my case, where that person spent all their money, they have that house there. The house isn't generating income. And again, if it does generate income, that can't be spent for their supplemental needs. It goes toward their basic cost of care.
Right.
That $45 is locked in. Well, what if we could have worked with that person before this was at this level, before they had spent all their money, even before they went to the nursing home, and we were able to protect some amount of their money, whether it's $20,000 or $200,000, depending on their situation, in a protected trust that the government cannot make them spend. For us, we really think, more than anything else, that's a quality of life fund for them. And that generates some extra income, and also there's ways that the children can get at the principal, so that money is there, so dad doesn't just have to have $45 a month for his quality of life. Now, that's a very valuable thing.
Oh,
And so
absolutely, sure.
we're protecting it also for the children to inherit, which is probably something dad wanted. But before that, before we even get to the children inheriting that money, it's their quality of life. That's even more pressing an issue when there's a spouse. Because the government does let the spouse, let's say we have a sick spouse and a well spouse, all right? One is living at home still, one is in the nursing home, okay? The one at home is a caregiver, they're very distressed, and they want to take care of their spouse, and certainly they do. But they also are wondering, what's going to happen to me when the money is spent? We're not concerned just about the quality of life for that person in the nursing home. We're also concerned about the quality of life now and the future for that person at home.
Oh, right.
Because how much money can they keep?
Absolutely.
What will happen when their spouse, if their spouse has IRAs or pensions, will they get that money when their spouse is gone?
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe not. So we're really looking at the quality of life for both spouses,
Okay.
and using whatever the law allows, what the state of Pennsylvania allows, that they can keep for income and for the quality of life for both people. So that is really our focus. The one thing that senior citizens, I think, most fear is running out of money.
Sure.
And I don't blame them. So we're concerned to make sure we can minimize the hurt in terms of losing assets, playing by the rules, but allowing them to protect whatever the current law allows them to keep.
Right.
So I want to catch up. I mean, I want to just summarize. So people can get Medicaid when they run out of money. Now, I'm curious, what happens to the Social Security money that they've been getting?
They still get it.
Okay.
And if I'm in a nursing home receiving Medicaid, my Social Security check still comes to me, but I must use that check to help pay for my share of the care.
So if your check's $1,000, for example,
Yeah, I'm
and it's
paying
an $8,000 bill, now you have a $7,000 bill that you're still paying for yourself, and you're still paying, and still eventually have to
Yes.
use Medicaid. Wow, I realized that there was a situation. I didn't realize, as you start to play the scenarios out, they get worse and worse and worse if somebody doesn't plan. Now, and I'm curious, because you talked about planning, and it sounds great. Is it trust that you're creating, or is it something different?
Often it's a trust.
Okay.
There's a certain kind of trust that the Medicaid law allows you to have.
Okay.
It's very clear, it's quite straightforward what that trust can do and what it can't do. So that's the kind of trust we create. We don't need a trust in every single situation. More often than not we use it, but not always. Let me get back, if I can go back to your Social Security question.
Sure.
There's one variation. I was just meeting with a lady yesterday whose husband is in a nursing home. Will be applying for Medicaid, and he will receive Medicaid right away, and really they had unfortunately spent down all their assets, but I was able to reassure her of two things. Number one, your husband will receive Medicaid right away, so you won't have to pay these $8,000 bills anymore.
Wow.
Number two, the law is very careful about that spouse at home. She's well, she's at home. What about her income? Does she have enough to live on? He has much larger, he has maybe 4 times as much income as she does, pension, Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she can't live on her Social Security alone. She can't pay the rent,
Okay.
she can't pay, the utilities, she can't. So the Medicaid law allows her to take as much of his income as she needs for those basic living expenses. So not all of his money will go to the nursing home. The law allows her, there's a cap on it, but it's adequate. If the cap is high enough that she will have enough, more than enough to pay her way. But what she needed to hear from me was she needs to tell them that she needs some of his income, over $1,000 a month of his income, to go really to her, and that's allowed. So she'll be okay, and she can keep the house that she's living in. That was not at risk because the house is in her name. So there's no lien on that house because she's not the one getting Medicaid. So because she's not the one getting Medicaid, there's no lien on the house because it's not his house.
So if I'm married and I'm going to, all of a sudden I'm going to nursing care, maybe something happened, why don't I just sign my wife the house, take all my assets, sign it over to my wife, or sign all the assets over to my kids, and then I get Medicaid from day one? Is that possible?
Some of the things you said were okay, some were not so.
Okay.
All right. But in a sense, fundamentally, you're right, because Larry, you do have to do something.
Okay.
You have to take some action, and it sometimes it seems like very drastic action. What I tell clients is, all your life, for 60, 70 years, you've been playing football, one game. Now we're playing rugby. And it's the rules that we used to think of with the normal rules of life don't work anymore. When you're in this wonderful world of Medicaid planning, you can't do what you thought you could do. For example, people say, well, I can give my kids $13,000 a year, can't I? That's the football rules. That's the old rules. That's true. That's exactly right. No longer in the Medicaid world. That's not a good idea.
So I can't even give them 13. I mean, I was talking about giving them, whatever, my entire state. I can't even give them 13 of them.
Here's the problem.
Wow.
That would be way too easy. And if that were the truth, then everybody would go on Medicaid day one, right? The government budget would go skyrocketing and so on. So the government says, well, yes, you're perfectly free to do that. It's a free country. You can give away all your money to your kids. Now, giving it to your wife is no problem.
Right.
With some exceptions we'll get to. Giving it to your kids is perfectly fine. But that creates what's called a penalty period. It's not hockey, but it's a penalty period. Let's say, for example, I have $50,000.
Right.
I give my wife the house, I put the deed in her name, that's a good idea. There's some more I can give her, we'll get to later. But we want to give $50,000 to our kids. You can do that. But now that means now I'm out of money, right? I'm out of money, I'm sick, I need nursing care. In those respects, I do qualify for Medicaid, because to receive Medicaid, you must be medically qualified. You have to be sick enough to need that kind of care. Okay.
Right. And we'll assume if somebody's on a nursing home.
That's assumed.
Yeah,
that's assumed. Secondly, you have to be qualified in your assets, meaning you essentially have none. A few thousand you're allowed to keep, but essentially none. And thirdly, you can't have a huge income. If you make $10,000 a month, you don't need Medicaid. You can pay your own way.
Right.
So it's common sense. So you have to be qualified medically, asset, and income. Let's say in your example, you qualified on all three points, and you then apply for medical assistance. you will be admitted to Medicaid sort of halfway. They'll say, okay, you meet those 3 tests. And because you meet those 3 tests, you're medically qualified, you're asset qualified, you're income qualified, you are sort of quasi on Medicaid. Medicaid will now pay for your drugs, pharmacy bills, and so on, which is helpful. But they're not going to pay the $8,000 a month, not yet.
Okay.
What they're saying is, because you made that $50,000 gift to your children, that creates what's called that penalty period, which is about, not quite, 7 months in your case.
Because it's 50,000, or is it more?
There's a mathematical formula I won't bore you with.
Okay,
There's a mathematical formula that's very easy to figure out.
So it changes by the amount and the time?
Right.
So, okay.
You divide that 50,000 by the magic number, and that magic number is about 7,500. So that means you are on Medicaid 7 months from now.
Okay.
Okay? And 7 months from now, you're right, you'll get Medicaid paying for that nursing home bill. But in the meantime, during that penalty period, you must pay it privately. You must pay it with your own money.
Well, what happens to the person who gave the 50,000 away? The kids spent it, and that's all they had. I mean,
That's why we use trust.
wow.
Because here's the risk. These are, to a person, you're just hearing it, this is all new to you. To us, it's the world we swim. Does the fish know it's in water? No. So we live in this world. But most people, and I wouldn't expect them, don't know these rules. And they might think, well, if I give it away, that's okay. Because I can give away $13,000, right? Well, yes, you can from the IRS perspective, but not from Medicaid.
All right,
So
okay.
part of our job is to, part of any plan or any lawyer is to educate your clients, educate their family, why that's not a good idea, because it creates a penalty period. The risk is, I gave the $50,000 to my child, they're struggling financially, and with this economy, they were out of work, and that happened, and they had to spend it because they got laid off, or their house was underwater with the mortgage, and they were just in financial trouble, or they had an emergency illness, or who knows what happened, or they got divorced, or they just bought snowmobiles and jet skis and went on a trip because they didn't know any better. They thought it was a gift, right? It was their money. Well, now the penalty period, and you say, oops, I've got to pay for this. So could you please give it back, kids? And probably most kids would give it back and would mean well. But if I gave that $50,000 to 3 children, and 2 of them are fine, and they'll give me back roughly, $17,000, which is a third. But the third child was the one in financial problems, and it was spent just to keep the house. They had to spend the money. Well, now what do I do for that last couple of months? I've got enough to go maybe 4 months, 5 months, but I haven't got enough for the last 2 months. Now I've got a problem. And that's a problem for the nursing home. They're a business. Now that's a disaster for them, because they're not getting paid. What's going to happen? They're going to kick you out.
Right.
What else can they do? Or, in Pennsylvania, we have this old law going back to the 1700s, which was renewed 6 years ago in Pennsylvania, which says that nursing home, and this has happened in Bucks County, and it could happen anywhere in Pennsylvania, that nursing home has the right to sue that child. Can you imagine that? And say, give us that $17,000 that you got from Dad 4 years ago. You owe it. And they had every right to do that. Why? The nursing home is a business. They've got 2 months when they're not getting paid. They don't like that. They have to pay their people. And they have a right to go after that child and sue them. And they have done that. I can show you cases where sometimes it's been 6 figures. And the children, what's their defense? They have no defense. They spent the money. Well, I'm sorry, that's no excuse. You still owe us the $17,000. So it's a mess. It's a mess. So I understand you've got it. You can't. These messes can easily be avoided, and there's a way you can give the money away, but if you need it, it's there, and you can plan for that period of time called that penalty period. So you can do all those things, but you have to do them in a more educated way, so the law will work for you and not work against you.
Yeah, and I didn't realize Medicaid it's a state plan then, so...
It's run by the states, it's funded in great part by federal money, but it's run by the states.
So some of our users may be outside of Pennsylvania, their state may be different, the laws may be different?
Yes, really. The laws in every state they're fundamentally the same, but they do vary considerably in the way the states implement and interpret those laws. So you really need to, we'd have to work with an attorney in New Jersey or Delaware or New York who knows those laws, or just have them do it.
But again, you say the basics are the same, and I think that's what we're really what we want.
The basics are the same.
Right.
Anywhere you go.
Right. Okay. Oh, awesome. And then there's healthcare insurance. So I'm sorry, long-term healthcare insurance.
Right.
Long-term healthcare insurance.
Right.
How would you plan for long-term healthcare insurance? What does it cover? What does it not cover? How does it work?
Right. Let me give you a story just 2 days old. Met with a wife of a client. The client is in a rehab center. He's had some physical problems. He may need nursing home care. They've been clients for years. They're part of our membership program, so we've been seeing them every couple of years. So we know them very well. I met with her daughter, and her daughter's husband, which is very, very typical. We need our children sometimes to help us because, understandably, what is her whole focus right now? It's her husband, his care, his medical improvement. She is totally focused on that. Don't blame her a bit. So she needs the children to come in and help her work through these other legal financial issues.
Right.
And it's a blessing to her that she has that. She has a good family, good relationships, they're savvy kids, they're honest kids, great situation. Anyway, here's her situation. We need to preserve some assets for her quality of life and his. Without getting into the details of that plan, they, husband and wife, both had something which really, really made this much easier to do. They both had excellent long-term care insurance plans.
Okay.
Matter of fact, theirs were probably about the best you could get. Their plans would pay for 5 years. Their plans were inflation adjusted, meaning because nursing home costs go up every year.
Oh, I'm sure.
3, 4, 5% every year.
Interesting.
So their long-term care, not everybody needs this kind of plan, don't get me wrong, but theirs happened to be kind of a luxury plan.
Right.
And their plan goes up 5% every year. So whereas in the beginning it was $120 a day it would pay towards cost of care, now it's about $200 a day, which is great. That's great. That's $6,000 a month.
Okay.
So, and it's 5 years. Now, why is that so important, and why did they buy 5 years? There's this other rule that I think everybody's heard about when they think about long-term care and Medicaid. There's a 5-year rule. They're not quite sure what it means, but they know there's a 5-year rule. You're too young to have heard about this. When you get to be 60, Larry, all your friends will be talking about this because if it's still the same, the 5-year rule. Well, there is a 5-year rule, that's true. The 5-year rule in the Medicaid world is a rule that is a reporting rule. Here's the situation. I'm applying for Medicaid. This lady I met yesterday, he will qualify immediately for Medicaid because of their assets and income. No planning, no protection needed or possible anymore, I should say. But even though we know, and the nursing home knows that he qualifies right away, they still require her to produce with the application about that thick a stack of financial records, every single financial account they have or have had, even if it's now closed, over 5 years. Bank accounts, CDs, IRAs, investment accounts, everything. Why? Because the law requires it, but why does the law require you to show them 5 years worth of everything you did financially?
So
what are they looking for?
Sick, they're going to hide the money.
They're looking for a gift.
Right.
Anything over $500 in a month.
Wow.
That can't be explained.
$500? Holy cow.
If you can't explain it, why did you give your daughter $500? If you can explain it because, whatever, you were essentially buying something from her or reimbursing her because she paid the car repair bill for you. Okay, fine. If you can prove that. But if it was $1,000 to my granddaughter as a Christmas gift, that's a gift. Penalty period.
Wow.
Right? So they're looking for any large gift over those years. So, and you have to show everything that you had. So there's no hiding here. I mean, with today's internet and banking, they'll find it.
I see what they're doing.
Or where's you were paying property taxes 3 years ago, and now you're not. Where'd the house go? Tell me where the house went. Did you give it away? Oh yeah, we did. Well, they're going to find that because there's no more property taxes being paid.
It's a bigger mess if you
Wow.
try to hide it because all of a sudden it's moved. Wow.
There are penalties for fraud. So you don't
Sure.
want to
Oh,
hide.
no.
Anyway, so that's the 5-year rule.
Fascinating.
Now that, in this case, the lady I was meeting at, it's not a problem because they didn't make any gifts, but they still have to report. Well, so with this, getting back to the family, I met with the lady with her daughter and son-in-law. The 5-year rule is not really a worry to them. Why? Because they've got this insurance that's
Right,
going to pay
absolutely.
for exactly 5 years. So they can make those gifts, and they will make some gifts. Who cares? Because after 5 years, they don't have to report those gifts. Legally, that gift is now, you can say, off the radar.
So if I get you correctly, they move into a nursing home today. They immediately move their assets out of their estate to the children or
to a trust.
or whatever they want to do. And then they pay for out of that trust or the children pay for the nursing home for 5 years. And if for 5 years they basically look broke.
Well, they are, whatever way they have to pay that bill for 5 years. In this case, they have the insurance.
Right.
So that bill, that'll pay for the bill pretty well. Plus their own income, they're okay. Even if, it becomes a very expensive bill, remember you got that inflation rider every year, it goes up 5%. So I think they'll be in good shape and they'll make the 5 years safely. And for both him and her, because we're protecting her, because who knows if she gets sick someday, right?
Absolutely, sure.
Oh,
So we're
right.
protecting her house, even though we don't usually have to, but she wants to. So because they've got that 5 years. Now not everybody has a plan like that, but long-term care insurance, this is why you asked me about this.
Right.
Long-term care insurance, number one, it really helps you to preserve more of your money by buying you time. It also pays for things that Medicaid doesn't pay for. For example, if I'm kind of sick, but not very sick, I don't need skilled care in a nursing home. I don't need that much attention, that expensive. I just need someone to kind of help me through my day. And that might be what's called assisted living. Or I'm fairly okay, I can go down and get my meals and dress myself, but I'm not totally able to do those things. So I need a medium kind of level of care. That might be $4,000 a month for assisted living. Pennsylvania may eventually, they're moving in the direction of maybe having Medicaid help pay for that too. But right now, when you're in assisted living, which is not as bad as nursing home care, that's all private pay.
Oh, so Medicaid doesn't pay for assisted living?
No, they don't.
Oh, wow.
Not right now. So $4,000 a month, some people can handle that, some people can't handle $4,000 a month indefinitely. And they have to draw down principal to pay it. And I can't help too much there. The financial advisor might be able to help. But since there's no Medicaid to pick up the slack, we can't do what we would do for a nursing home situation. So that's
I
where
see.
long-term
Okay.
care would come into play. Long-term care will also, insurance, long-term
Sure,
care
sure,
insurance.
understood.
Long-term care insurance will also pay for having someone come in your home, so you can stay in your home. Now there's a situation where Medicaid can pay for that also if you qualify on assets and income and health. So there is that possibility. But if, we're a family, a normal family, we haven't given away our assets, and we'd like to have somebody come in the home, that would be our first choice, which most people would say.
Right.
Well, long-term care insurance would pay for that for a certain amount of time until it's used up. But usually what you figure out what you would get back in benefits, that's much more than you ever paid in premium. Now, of course, there's a premium to pay.
Obviously.
And what does an average long-term care
Well,
policy run?
depends on how old you are. If you
Okay.
buy it when you're 30 years old, it's not much at all. If
Okay.
you buy it when you're 50, 60, and again, it might be a couple of thousand, $3,000-4,000 a year. It depends how much coverage you're buying.
Right.
And for some people, that's a big financial commitment. It might be the most expensive insurance they've ever bought.
Sure.
And so it does take some budgeting and thinking through, and they can work with a professional who can tell them what are the good companies, what you really should have, and what is sort of an opt-in or an add-on they might not need. So that's an option people really should think about. I would just parenthetically say, what I tell my clients is the only thing I know for sure, or pretty much think I know will happen in the Medicaid law is it will change. Because
Yeah, right.
it changed about 5 years ago to make it somewhat more difficult to get Medicaid, doing the things I'm describing to you today. It will happen again. Why? I don't know when, I don't know how it will change, But the odds are, I think it will, because that's a huge budget. It's one of the biggest budget items every state has. And states that are going bankrupt, which we heard about in the news, that's one of their problems. It's not just those pensions that they have to meet, it's also Medicaid. And so the government is quite concerned about that. And I would not be surprised if sometime in the future they make it even more difficult to do what we're doing now. For people younger, your age, Larry, and so on, it's something people should think about, because will Medicaid be there for you 30 years from now, 20 years from now, the way it is now?
Sure.
I wouldn't count on it. I don't know. And so long-term care insurance gives you that ability to have more flexibility and control.
At what point, someone's maybe 50, 60 years old, and they're just the average Joe.
Yeah.
They maybe have $50,000 or $100,000 in the bank, and we have viewers who are, they know their life is going to be much better than that. They know their life's never going to change. Whatever the situation may be, we talk about laws of attraction, whatever. But you have someone who says, they have $100,000 in the bank. They don't want to spend $400 or $500 a month on long-term healthcare insurance. Should they really care?
Well, what they could do, and everybody makes their own budget decisions,
Right.
Larry, and we can't tell them what to do. For people who say, we just can't quite see doing that. We have other goals. It might be our college education for our kids, our own retirement might take priority, paying off our mortgage, whatever those things might be. I grant that. I won't argue with folks like that. What I would suggest they do, and this sounds self-serving, and maybe it is, but they can do the legal steps. Create that protected trust now, and here's why it makes sense to do it. When they changed the rules on Medicaid almost exactly 5 years ago, it went from a 3-year rule to a 5-year rule overnight on February 6th, 2006, February 8th, 2006. Well, there were people who, before that magic day in February 2006, had made gifts under the old 3-year rule.
Right.
They were grandfathered.
Ooh.
Okay.
Those 3-year
Okay.
gifts were okay, even though there was a new law, a new sheriff in
Here, at
town.
least they did that. Right.
So what I'm saying is people, I assume that would be true next time they change it, because that was true last time they changed it. I can't guarantee that, but it's a pretty good assumption. So if somebody were to say, look, that long-term care insurance is just too much, but for a one-time price, they could do one thing, which would be put their house in this trust, or put some funds in this trust. And that way, if the law does change, I think they'd be grandfathered. So it's always for them a 5-year rule. So if they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s now, 5 years is probably no problem, because they're healthy. Now, anyway, so that would be my recommendation for them, and again, maybe it sounds self-serving, but for those who, ideally, they should have both. They should have long-term care insurance and the trust, because then they've got that layer cake and they get the maximum protection, because there will be a point when that long-term care insurance runs out, and then what do you do if you haven't protected your assets? So ideally, they should have both, but if the long-term care or that ongoing is just too much for them in their budget right now, I would say, well, think about it in the future, but for now, do the planning while we have a 5-year rule on the books, because now you're grandfathered, and the trust is such that you still really can use those assets.
So the basic recommendation is obviously at the very least, look into a long-term healthcare insurance plan, find out how much it costs.
Find out what it costs for you.
Yeah, and then make that decision based on your budget.
Basically, yeah.
I want to end the show so I can go call my insurance agent.
Wow, yeah.
Well, but you need a person well versed in this, and I'm not the expert. An agent who probably specializes in this, because what you need from your agent is I found in seeing these things when they actually make a claim, you need an agent who can be your advocate. Because like any other insurance, you have to convince them that you deserve the benefit. Right. That flooding in your basement, wasn't your mistake when you left the water on. It really was an accident that the insurance will cover. Same thing with long-term care. You have to meet those qualifications, and we have a situation right now where someone is dealing with a company saying, my mother really does qualify, you owe us the money, and they're hemming and hawing about that. So it will help sometimes. There are other people who can be advocates for you in that. There are people who can help with insurance. But you want somebody who wants to be your advocate. Secondly, a person who knows they're not, I would say, hopefully not tied to any one company. They can look at the landscape out there, because it's a changing landscape. This is a relatively new 20 years or so, but that's relatively new in the insurance world. Unlike life insurance, been around forever. insurance companies are still learning the right numbers of what they should
that's
predict
interesting.
on what will be the claims rate, how much
Sure,
should they
sure.
charge. They're still learning that. So
Wow.
an experienced person would know this company's figured out the numbers right. You're not going to have some huge increase, because some companies are asking the state of Pennsylvania this year for some very big increases in premium.
Yeah.
So maybe that with other companies, maybe they don't need to because they figured out things better in the past.
Good thinking.
So it's just someone to help you be a good shopper.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then finally, just one more question. I mean, we have a lot of people who they get remarried. You have two spouses. They get married when they're 50. They're keeping their assets separate. And it's not even an issue. They've been keeping their assets separate since their marriage. They want to make sure that their kids get this and their kids get this. Is that protection enough?
No.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, a prenuptial agreement is no protection against Medicaid. Medicaid, between your money and Medicaid, a prenuptial agreement is a tissue paper. It's no protection. Matter of fact, we think the highest, or people who really ought to think about doing this protection, even when nobody's sick, is people who've remarried. A lot of our clients are lovely people, they have great marriages, they lost a spouse. Most of them eventually remarried, in my experience.
Sure.
That's wonderful, they've always had great relationships, no problem with that. But, here's the issue. Your mom loses her husband, your dad, okay? Sometime later, she finds a guy, nice guy, and she marries him. Okay, what if he gets sick? She is at risk. She can't say, we have a prenuptial agreement, he doesn't get, no, that won't work. She is obligated as his spouse to pay down her assets to pay for his care. She can't, let's say she has $250,000 of investments and,
Right. Sure.
and such. She can't keep all that. The Medicaid law
her
said,
money. It's never been joint. It's
doesn't matter.
Wow.
Doesn't matter. The most she can
Wow.
keep, unless they've done planning,
Right.
she's got, in our example, $250,000. He doesn't, or he's spent all of his money. Medicaid says that she can keep $109,560. That's exactly how much she can keep.
Out of no matter what she has.
Well, plus her IRAs, which
Okay.
is a very interesting loophole.
It's an
I call it a
interesting
loophole.
loophole,
She could have $1 million in IRA.
Including a Roth IRA?
Including a
Okay.
Roth.
Interesting.
So the interesting thing is, under current law, her IRAs are not even on the table, which is a very helpful loophole. But if she has CDs and some mutual funds or stocks or whatever, cash accounts, money market, checking worth
Wow.
$250, she can't keep it. She must spend, in that case, what is that, about $140,000 of it to pay for his care. Now, again, I'm not saying she shouldn't love him, but there are ways to preserve that asset, not only for her well-being, but also for his, frankly, for his quality of life. Remember that?
Sure.
So we could do that protected fund and help him. I mean, they're good people, but I found that when the children find that out, that mom could lose half her money,
Yeah.
they're not happy. Because, they may say, I'm glad you remarried, Mom, but
Right.
would you want 140,000 going to him? Not so sure.
Right.
If we can protect his quality of life, so there's supplemental for him, so he has the best care possible, yet get Medicaid, and still protect it for Mom, usually that's what the family wants. But that prenuptial agreement does no good whatsoever in this context of Medicaid. There's no protection whatsoever.
So she can't even, the knee-jerk reaction, I'm going to file for divorce tomorrow, get divorced in 90
Well,
days, and
that is a legal remedy, but
Is it
frankly,
really?
it is. But number one, the real reason that we don't see it is, although theoretically it is a remedy, people don't want to do that.
no, I get it, but
They don't want to
People have
because
done stranger
he's my
things for
husband,
money,
I
right?
love him.
Right.
But there are people who will do that because it is a way of escaping that.
that's amazing.
But
That's
I-
amazing that you can actually get away with that.
You can, especially with the prenuptial agreement, but I've yet to see someone, in my experience, I know other attorneys have seen it happen, and if people ask me, I will say, yes, it is a remedy. I have to tell them the truth, it's a law.
Wow.
But I've never seen anyone do that because they feel really funny about it.
Sure.
There's other ways of protecting the money that don't entail a divorce.
Peter, I'm amazed. I'm sure we can go on all day.
Incredible.
This is it's a great conversation. I've actually learned a ton. I'm sure
That's
our
amazing.
audience also has learned a ton. And your law office, it's High Point Law Offices?
High Point Law Offices, we're in the High Point Office Complex in Chalfont,
Awesome.
between Upper State Road and 202. We have our main offices here. We also have clients in the Lehigh Valley and in Monroe County as well. So we see lots of clients everywhere, but this is a large part of our practice.
And we would suggest, obviously you can talk to Peter, your own lawyer, or if you're out of state, find an attorney for your state, and make sure you keep your assets. This is rough. All I know is I'm calling my insurance agent right away and getting a long-term healthcare policy because I plan to have this problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you understood that, then you're planning to have the problem too.
Yeah.
Well, take care, everybody. Thanks so much for watching.